if you're like me and you're willing to go into high-risk situations and you love the thriving of that experience of taking on a high-risk challenge and the potential of being successful at it, you're bound to fail from time to time. And by the way, many of you who are going to be CEOs in transformational businesses, you're going to fail. Maybe not as publicly in a public belly flop with a scam company as I found myself in after Apple, but you may well find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with failure on a smaller scale and where you have to cope with it. And you may be able to cope with it without losing your job. And you may be able to take that failure and you may be able to ring fence it so that you can isolate it from everything else that you're doing. And so I've learned how important it is to be prepared. Preparation is everything. Having a plan B, having a team that is able to have the skills on your team that can deal with a tough situation, having people you can look to outside of your organization, again, why I think the mentor role is so valuable. Being prepared to deal with all the contingencies that can happen when failure takes place. And by ring fencing it and being able to say, I can bound that failure in a way that lets me cope with it. And I can explain that failure in ways that the rest of my organization can say, okay, we get it, you made a mistake. Now, how do we deal with it? And how can we be helpful to it, to you in undoing mistakes that you have made? So there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Everybody makes some mistakes. If you're a decider, the decider isn't always going to decide correctly. You can even look at incredibly successful people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, who made incredibly successful decisions, became legendary in their competence. But they also, as deciders, I can tell you experiences, because I worked with both of them, where they made mistakes in their decisions. They weren't the right decisions, but that didn't mean that their life work was a mistake. It just meant that they may have had small failures along the way. So for me, it took literally decades to earn back the self-confidence that I could become a public spokesperson again about the things I'm talking about today. But I had to go through those days in the wilderness of not just feeling sorry for myself, but I had to go through and say, okay, so I'm never going to give up. And one of the characteristics of a successful entrepreneur is you never give up. You never give up. No matter how tough it is, no matter how humiliating a situation you may find yourself in, never, ever, ever give up. And so I said, okay, I'll pursue some different paths. I don't ever expect to run a public company again, I was saying to myself in the 1990s, but that doesn't mean I want to sit on the sidelines and not be a participant in some of the incredible things that are going on. So I moved into different domains. I moved into telecommunications, and we had a number of successes there. I moved into building platform software services for financial services, for marketing services, for healthcare services, and have had some extraordinary opportunities to work with some amazingly talented CEOs as a mentor, as an investor. And we've had a lot of success along the way. But we've also run into situations where we've had some mistakes and made some other failures. So I don't think somebody has to be stigmatized because they fail. I think there are many cultures where you are stigmatized. After you have a serious failure, you're not given a second chance. America doesn't happen to be one of those places. We happen to be a place that embraces pragmatism. We're a place that gives people the opportunity to try again when you fall down and pick yourself back up. But we don't have respect for people who give up. We don't have respect for people who say, okay, because I failed, I'm never going to try something high risk again. And so part of this series is to give you some case history stories of some companies and some leaders who had big failures and weren't able to pick themselves back up and disappeared, either the individuals or the companies. And I'm going to give you some examples of others who said, okay, our back is against the wall, and yes, we made mistakes, and yes, we could have failed and gone out of business, but they did pick themselves back up, and they were able to succeed. And that's what it's like in the world of transformational risk taking.